Hi, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to the Mental Moms podcast. I'm Kat, and I'm here with.
Rhiannon.
We're so happy you're tuning in to this week's episode. Rhiannon's going to go ahead and cover what we're going to be discussing today, and thank you for tuning in.
All right, y'all. So, at the end of last episode, Kat did like a little monologue about loving yourself and, putting yourself first when it comes to dating and stuff. And it kind of got me thinking about a book that I read earlier this year called Welcome Home by Najwa Zebian, I think is how you say her name. And it's a book about like she talks about attachment styles, but in the book she really she focuses on like building a home in yourself instead of building a home in other people. Um, she talks about like how whenever you build a home in other people and then they can just pick it up and leave you whenever you want, versus whenever you build a home in yourself, you can you're at home with yourself and not gonna be up and left in the dust by when you build a home with someone else. And then she also like in the book she also talks about like going into different rooms of forgiveness. But she talks about forgiving yourself and loving yourself and just everything about that. Then she goes into the attachment styles, and I started thinking about the book called Attached by Amir, Levine, and Rachel Heller. And she talks about attachment styles and the anxious, avoidant, secure, and then there's a anxious, avoidant attachment style or disorganized. And they talk about how like the childhood molds us to have certain types of attachment styles.
Yes, so we kind of just wanted to cover the few different attachment styles, and then we'll get into ours. So they're, in the field of mental health. There's sometimes, different names for different things, but from what we could find on this article, the article that I found this information from is on psychcentral.com. And I have other books that discuss attachment styles. So, you may find that there are different names for them, but ultimately the descriptions of them are pretty much the same. Me and Rhiannon talked a little bit, off camera about them and our, you know, what the word is the word I'm looking for, our experience with them and, what we've learned about them. So the first one, I'm not going to really get too much into because it's the healthiest one and we don't want to talk about it. And it's secure. That's the first one. Neither of us have that attachment style, so we don't want to talk about that one too much. But I'm going to give you a brief description. So it is securely attached people growing up feeling secure emotionally and physically, and they can pretty much engage in the world with others in a very healthy way.
Okay, whenever I read my book on attachment styles, they kind of mentioned like they're okay with anxious people because they have no problem reassuring their partner, and they have no problem being with an avoidant person because they don't think anything negative about that person being avoidant. Oh, that person needs space. Okay, you can have space. Versus with an anxious person, they'd be worried about it.
I definitely, yeah. Now that you said that, I know that for a fact because the person I'm with, he's very secure. He doesn't get anxious. He's very calm. Doesn't really have any like tendencies of avoiding or being anxious about any aspect of a relationship. So I think if you're a very anxious or avoidant person, it's not going to work if you're with another person like that. So just that was just a side note. The second attachment style I wanted to talk about is avoidant. Avoidant or dismissive avoidant or anxious avoidant are all words for the same insecure attachment style, according to psychcentral.com. It's basically defined by failures to build long-term relationships with others due to an inability to engage in physical and emotional intimacy. A brief description of how it develops. In your childhood, you may have had strict or emotionally distant and absent caregivers. They may have left you to fend for yourself, expected you to be independent, reprimanded you for depending on them, rejected you when expressing your needs or emotions. or been slow to respond to your basic needs. You may have an anxious avoidant style if you persistently avoid emotional or physical intimacy, you feel a strong sense of independence, are uncomfortable expressing your feelings, you're pretty much dismissive of others, you have a hard time trusting people, you're threatened by people who want to get close with you, you spend more time alone than you do interacting with others, you believe you don't need others, and you have commitment issues. So that is your avoidant or avoidant anxious. It's pretty much the same thing. The next one I wanted to talk about was anxious attachment. And this is pretty much described as fear of rejection, fear of abandonment, depending on a partner for validation and emotional regulation. You have codependent tendencies. It says your parents may have pretty much alternated between overly coddling you and then becoming detached or indifferent. They maybe were super easily overwhelmed. Sometimes they were attentive and then sometimes they push you away. They made you responsible for how they felt. And sometimes these children would grow up, or you would grow up thinking that you were supposed to take care of other people's feelings and often become codependent. These are a sign that you'd have if you have an anxious attachment. You have clingy tendencies. You're highly sensitive to criticism, real or perceived criticism. You need approval from others, jealous tendencies, difficulty being alone, low self-esteem, feeling unworthy of love, intense fear of rejection, significant fear of abandonment, difficulty trusting others. If you have an anxious attachment style, you probably feel unworthy of love and need constant reassurance from your partners. You'd probably often blame yourself for challenges in that relationship, and probably have a lot of jealousy and distrust just due to your own poor self-esteem. Ultimately, they put you have a deep-rooted fear of being abandoned, rejected, or alone. And those fears typically express themselves in these ways. That's a lot, but I feel like, I don't know, for me, these attachment styles are not easily explained via just one sentence. I feel like it's more easily understood when you can hear, how it may have developed in your childhood and then kind of like the signs of it. Just so you can easily put yourself like in that space to say, is that me or is that not me? So the last one that I wanted to cover really quickly is disorganized attachment style. And I know in other people, doctors and things like that, they name it something differently. But basically how I perceive it is anxious and avoidant together. But I'm going to give you the description that I got off of psychcentral.com. And it is anxious disorganized attachment is defined as having extremely inconsistent behavior and difficulty trusting others. So you're very inconsistent on how you're feeling, basically. This develops most commonly from childhood trauma, neglect, or abuse. Fear of their parents, their sense of safety as far as their parents go is most likely present in these people's childhood, and that's kind of how that develops there. Children with this attachment style may seem confused. Their caregivers are inconsistent and are often seen as sources of comfort and fear by their children, which leads to their disorganized behavior. So basically, as a kid, you like are confused, like whether or not you trust your parent, for safety, and then you don't. Like you're afraid of them, but you also know you're supposed to look to them as safety. So it's very confusing. So your signs of a disorganized attachment style include fear of rejection, inability to regulate your emotions, contradictory behaviors, high levels of anxiety, difficulty trusting others, and signs of both avoidant and anxious attachment styles. So that's kind of both of the attachment styles we discussed in one. They also did mention that this type is also associated with mental health conditions in adulthood, including mood disorders, personality disorders, self-harm, and substance use disorder. So if you struggle with mood disorders, personality disorders, self-harm, and substance abuse, they say that you might be a little bit more prone to the disorganized attachment style versus just one or the other of the other two. They went briefly over how it manifests in relationships, and they said individuals with these attachment styles tend to have unpredictable and confusing behavior. They alternate between being aloof and independent and being clingy and emotional. While they desperately seek love, they also push their partners away because of the fear of love. They believe that they'll always be rejected, but they don't avoid emotional intimacy. They fear it. And they also consistently seek it out only to reject it again. And so real quick, and the last point of this is the people in relationships with people with this type of style, they perceive their partners as unpredictable very much. Like their partner will ultimately become fearful because they're like, well, I don't know. Like, what's today going to look like with them? Are they going to be okay with accepting my love or are they not? So that's our 4 attachment styles we're talking about today. And we did want to get into our own personal attachment styles, but if you want to learn more about those attachment styles, Google is your BFF, but Psych Central has a lot of information if you want to check that out. And also, the book Rhiannon mentioned Attached.
All right, so you can check out Attached, Psych Central, and then also Welcome Home by Najwa Zebian. That's also a really good resource if you have that anxious attachment or anxious avoidant type of or disorganized attachment.
We can list the books where Rhiannon found them in the bio below, in the in the area where you read stuff. We'll try to put that in there.
We will put the books in the description. So, did you want to talk about your book, the book that you had?
Okay, so I don't really want to name the book because it's something personal to me, but I will read because it's about my personal diagnosis. But I will read, with the specific diagnosis, the attachment styles that are more commonly known with it. It's a mood disorder, so pretty much it'd probably go along with any mood disorder you'd have. But the attachment styles they identify. So the first one is secure, and they describe secure as high self-worth, believes others are approachable and caring, comfortable with autonomy and with forming close relationships. The second they named preoccupied, and they describe it as self-worth is based on gaining the approval and acceptance of others. Relationships are intense to the point of relying on individuals too much, and anxiety is only reduced with a significant other. So you're less anxious when you have a partner. Dismissing is the third attachment style they named. And this is described as positive view of self, desires independence and appears to avoid connections with others altogether, denies the need for close relationships and will say relationships are unimportant, very, very much so like avoidant. But they name it dismissing. And the last one is called fearful, and they describe it as sees self in a negative way, doesn't trust others, afraid to be in close relationships, but feels the need, experiences discomfort with close relationships, and sees self as unworthy of responsiveness from a significant other. Very much so anxious. So I think the fearful is probably more of like the anxious attachment style. Dismissing is probably more so avoidant. Preoccupied is a little bit of both, but more so like your entire identity and well-being lies on being with someone, you know what I mean, and putting that power within someone else. That's kind of how I interpret it. I will tell you guys, the psychiatrist who did this book is Daniel J. Fox, PhD. So if you want to look him up, you might find this book. I'll give you that. Give you that much. So Rhiannon, let's get into your attachment styles. I'm curious to learn about yours. And after hearing all of these attachment styles and all of this information that I read, what do you relate to?
All right, so I kind of relate to like the anxious avoidant or like that disorganized attachment style because I really do bounce back and forth between being like really like intense involved with someone where I'm like obsessed with them and then the after I get ghosted, right, from being too much, I will like go back into the dating pool, and that next time I'm really like detached from people, or like I'm kind of pushing them away where I'm like, oh, you don't want me. I really don't know what I want. I don't want a relationship. And I push people away when they're usually the next batch of people are like really good, not toxic people. And they're the ones that are like, I'm like, you know, and it just really sucks because they're good people. And I always chase the toxic people, but I'm obsessed first, and then the next round I'm just completely detached and like good luck getting any straightforward answer from me because I don't know what to do. I don't know how to feel. So I definitely relate to the disorganized or that like anxious avoidant attachment style because I do push people away and also I do chase people. So it really just depends, I guess.
It kind of sounds like it really depends on the person and kind of where you're at mentally, depending on the type of person they are and how they treat you. Is it really that's kind of what's gonna like I mean you're always gonna have those, but I think it does determine what kind of person they are.
I noticed I kind of get like overwhelmed with like people that are like too nice. I guess like I'm like, whoa, like hold on, like that's a lot to take in because I feel like maybe like I don't deserve it. And like my internal thoughts is like I don't deserve that, so like you're being too nice and that's scary to me. So then I like push them away even harder because I'm like, hold on, like that's too much. I don't know. I don't even know how to respond to that half the time. So.
Almost like in your head of thinking like I don't deserve this. Yeah, that is a part of that. 100%. You have that voice in your head like you want that, but then as soon as you get it, you reject it because you don't think you're worthy of it. You're not thinking that consciously you're not saying to yourself, I don't deserve this, but your subconscious is. And that's kind of a part of why you're rejecting it because you're like, I don't deserve this. And eventually they're going to realize I don't deserve this. And then they're going to reject me anyways. So this is too nice. This is too much. And even though it's nice now, I'm expecting you to disappoint me. So I'm not even going to enjoy this or like participate in this.
It's almost like that too good to be true, you know? Like, okay, Kat, what about you? How did you relate to all the attachment styles? Where do you think you fall?
Um, I hate to sound like I'm like copying you, but we did talk about this before. I'm like very much so both avoidant and anxious. But I feel like now in my life, in my current relationship, I think I don't want to say because I'm in a healthier relationship that it's kind of like leveled out because I can very much so catch myself on a day like being very like avoiding like the intimacy, avoiding like when he's complimenting me, I'm like you're just like saying it because you're with me, like I see it come in, you know what I mean? But I think overall in my relationship history, I've been disorganized. I have very much so found my value in myself based on the relationships that I was in. I felt like I could not be alone. I literally jumped from one relationship to another, back and back to back to back. And I think that's kind of why I ended up in a toxic relationship because I was just like the first person, the closest to me was like the person I jumped into the next relationship with. And it was literally because I was finding my self-worth in somebody else. And then I became, I feel like I jumped into a relationship with an avoidant person. So that kind of turned me more anxious and like very obsessive, like very like clingy, like codependent, like feeling like if I was away from this person, they would cheat on me or they would do this, you know what I mean? So it was very much like I've dealt with both. So I don't think I could be categorized in one or the other because I've definitely experienced both aspects of that in all the relationships I've been in. Um, yeah, it's for me personally, I want to say that the anxious attachment style I feel like is the worst because it's like it takes over you. Like you're like you almost how do I explain it? You almost like don't even have control over like how you're feeling. Like you're literally your feelings are dependent on how that person is acting that day. And it's the saddest thing like I've ever been through.
Yeah, I've noticed that like whenever like that person is like avoidant, then my mood changes and like I'm like I get more irritable, I get more on edge, I get more like sad, and it's just overall like so much feelings and stuff that go into it. And the moment that they give me attention, I'm happy again, like almost instantly. And it's so annoying to have your moods be like attached to someone else that either doesn't know that this is happening or straight up doesn't care. And it's the worst feeling. And it's honestly kind of dangerous. I mentioned this in the last episode when I felt like I wanted to like literally die over someone that had broken up with me after I'd only known them for a week. Um, and they had no care in the world for me. Like I'd only known him for a week. That was the end of it. But like it can be dangerous for people that have this attachment style because they could legitimately feel like they want to die. And people need to be more aware of like ghosting and be more aware of like using their words to communicate with people because it is dangerous to people that deal with this attachment style because like Kat said, it's often associated with mood disorders and personality disorders and it's just dangerous. So be better, people, please.
100%. I agree. And I think that I think probably most of I mean what we're going to be discussing in this podcast might be navigated towards mothers, but if there's any males out there, I mean this applies to women too. If you're not feeling it anymore, just be honest. You know what I mean? Because you just never know what's going through someone's mind. So yeah, PSA to all the men out there, but this does apply to women as well. You never know what someone could be struggling with. Just because you maybe met somebody and it was only a day or it was only a week or a month, whatever time it is, you never know what they struggle with. So just give someone the courtesy if you no longer want to be in communication with them or you no longer want to continue whatever it is you guys got going on. Just be honest with them. It doesn't take that much time out of your day to just say, I'm so sorry. I'm not feeling it. You know what I mean? It's going to take 5 minutes out of your day versus literally like basically cutting contact off with somebody. And if they're anxious and they have an anxious attachment style, you do not know what's going to go through their mind. They're going to be worried about that. Are you dead? Are you okay? And then they're going to go to terrible person. I deserve this. I want to die. The list could go on. Everyone is different. Everybody handles anxious attachment styles differently, but it could go as severe as someone wanting to kill themselves. And in not on as severe level as that, but literally like what you do affects their every emotion and it pretty much controls them. And someone who has been on that anxious end, I can tell you it's the worst feeling in the world not having control over my emotions because it's or how my partner decided to treat me that day or talk to me that day or avoid me that day. My entire day was determined by that. And that was nothing in my control. I didn't wake up saying I'm going to let this person control how I feel. It's literally something that's not in my control or anyone's control. And I just think that no matter who you are and what you got going on, please, please, please be more aware of how you treat people. No matter if you no longer want to be with them or be around them, treat them with respect and be honest. Because I think that someone with an anxious attachment style, yes, they're still going to be sad that you broke up with them, but they're not going to be left with questions and wondering, do you know? It might help a little bit more, like just knowing, like having the concrete, like words, like coming out of your mouth saying, I no longer want to because of XYZ, and their minds aren't left to like wonder and just come up with these, insane reasons. It's possible, y'all. It's a struggle out here. So we both come to the conclusion we both have a disorganized attachment style. We're very much so avoidant and anxious, which I think a lot of people are. I did want to ask you real quick. I kind of talked about, my relationships and the type of people that I've been in relationships with. If you think back to like any of your like, you know, notable, memorable relationships, what do you think their attachment styles were?
Hmm, that's interesting, honestly. I mean, the last serious relationship I was in was with my kid's dad, and I feel like honestly, he was probably anxious too, honestly, because he used to like always he wanted to text me all day, every single day. Like if I didn't reply to him, he would like get mad at me for not replying to him. Just like little stuff like that. His anger definitely like received like that. And in the thick of it, we were both very like attached to each other. Towards the end, I definitely started like pushing him away, where I would like start fights because I didn't want to be with him. And then I, just do stuff. But I think any other relationship, honestly, it's just I'm the anxious one. And everyone else has been like, where the heck is this coming from? They don't understand. But I think they were all like really shocked, if anything, that I was so insecure, I guess. But everyone seemed fine. I can only think about my own behavior, honestly, which is which was not good. It was not good.
I wanted to ask you something just like popped in my head. Do you ever start off your relationships kind of putting on a front? Like, do you ever like appear to people like you're totally normal? And then once you're like in the thick of it, not even on purpose, like you want to continue that, like, I'm healthy, I'm good. And then just they do something like inconsistent and that anxious shit comes out real quick and they're like, whoa, 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 where the hell did this come from?
I have a story about this. So last year I dated a guy and we were like great. We were talking, we were vibing, everything was good. And then he got into a really bad car crash. Really bad. And he didn't talk to me for days, but it wasn't and like I knew like okay, he's not ghosting me. Like in my head I was like, I know he's not ghosting me, something happened. I stalked his Facebook, found a friend of his, and I sent a message to this friend. I'm like, hey, I'm talking to this guy. I know for a fact he didn't ghost me, but something seems off. Do you know anything? He told me, yes, he got into a really bad car crash. He's in the hospital. And like it was a really bad thing. Anyways, so like but we were after he got out of the hospital, we were talking every day, snap, everything. And everything was going good. Everything was fine. And then something didn't feel right about like because I found his Facebook, but he didn't know I had found his Facebook. So I decided to continue to watch his Facebook after he got out of the hospital. And I noticed that he was online and I was like kind of like, okay, why hasn't he added me to Facebook? Like why hasn't he invited me to add him on Facebook, right? And that is my like snapping point where like I lost my shit and he was so thrown back. He was like, what the hell is going on? And he definitely like and he didn't make it any better because he started saying that someone had hacked into his Facebook and it wasn't him. And it was just like I knew it was a lie. Obviously, I'm not that stupid, but like he made it sound like he just made it so much worse. So after that, everything just went downhill very quickly because my front of being normal was so like shot by then. It was gone. There's no coming back from that. Not from me like being like, hey, I know you're on Facebook, and he's like, what the hell? Yeah, so yeah, I definitely put on the front, and I do it a lot. I do it a lot. I definitely want to pretend I'm healthy, and I'm not at all. And my mom has said that too. My mom has also called me out, but like you always pretend like you're healthy, and even like not even with just romantic partners, but like with friends, with my doctors, like with um my mom has said that like when she'll hear me on the phone talking to my doctors, and I'll be like, "Oh yeah, everything's fine," yada yada. Like I have a few bad days, but that's it. But then like my mom will be like looking at me in the back, like, "What? You're so not fine. Like you're like off the chart crazy right now." And I just pretend to be healthy, and I don't know why. I wish I knew why, but I don't know the reason.
I can't tell you why, but I can tell you it is definitely a part of this mental illness that we struggle with. And I relate to it 100%, not just in relationships. Because a relationship I was in, I started off like, I'm normal. I'm good. Like, I'm everything you'd want me to be, of course. And then one inconsistency comes, and I'm like, bitch, where the fuck were you at 3:33? And I messaged you at this time and I didn't get a response. Where were you at? Okay. Why are you with your friends? Da-da-da. I'm right there with you, but as well as like because I work, in a very professional setting and, I'm kind of like I have the office voice, if so to speak. But I like to say I have the office personality as well. And it's very easy for me to turn it on and turn it off. Some days it's not though, because the point where it's like you're too far gone to really fake it at any point, and that's when you start to stop talking to people, and that's when you really start to like let go of your responsibilities or you call off of work that day, because we all get to the point, well, people with mental illness get to the point where it's like too hard to fake it. But I definitely much so have that fake Karen voice, but I have that Karen personality. I can really switch it on and off depending on who I'm around and who I want to think I'm normal. Um, and I'm so insecure about feeling normal that I avoid most social settings because I'm thinking to myself, you're not going to fool them. They're going to see right through you.
I was also thinking about like our friendship whenever I first got my diagnosis for I remember that I was thinking about my friendships in the past and how like all of my friendships were always so wildly different, from each other. Like me and your friendship, like that was I cannot be that person again unless I was with you, you know? And I cannot be the same friend to you. Like if I had all of my friends in the same room, I don't even know who do I mask? Who do I copy? Because I don't know how to. And there was this one time when I went with my ex to a friend's house, and I started picking up her freaking accent and her way, her mannerisms and everything. And my ex called me out on it, and I was like, "Oh, I had no idea I was doing that." But it was so embarrassing, and I do this so often. It's not even just like pretending to be normal, but it's like totally picking up other people's personalities and making it my own.
Yeah, like it's so insecure with your own personality and who you are that yeah, I can understand. I can see that how you don't want to reveal yourself and who you are and the things that you struggle with. So it's literally easier to start copying homegirl's accent over here and the way she's acting because anything is better than showing who you truly are. And honestly, that's why I really don't have friends. That's why I really don't end up in social settings most of the time. And then when I am in social settings, I'm hyper fucking paranoid and fucking overstimulated because I'm like, I can't keep this up anymore. I need to get out of here. So like I let myself go. It's like unbuttoning your tight ass jeans when you get home or after you eat a big meal. That's how I feel.
Okay, so now that we've talked about our attachment styles, now we want to talk about how our childhood may have caused us to have the disorganized attachment style. So, Kat, do you want to go first?
Yeah, absolutely. So I wanted to start off by reading a little quote. because I'm your quote queen here. Also from psychcentral.com. I was reading a whole bunch of stuff on their website. And this was pertaining to how our parents in our childhoods really shaped our attachment styles and how they kind of carry on into our romantic relationships. So it says, we unconsciously expect our romantic partners to act as our parents did, and therefore we act in certain ways due to these expectations. And that pretty much sums it up. Like, our relationship with our parents pretty much is what determines what our attachment styles are going to be, because that's the very first attachment we have in our life. You know, from the moment we come out of our womb, we learn how we're going to get the attention of our mothers and our fathers. So that kind of, you know, it kind of shapes it. And I will say, I didn't have a great childhood. My mother was always very preoccupied with chasing the next guy and being pretty crazy. So I never felt like I had attention or that I was important, or that I mattered, because it was always another guy and it was always like a fight for attention, and it was always like when is it gonna end? And the only time I got attention was when I was going off the rails, like angry and like kind of like being a little bit disrespectful because I was so tired of like my mother's bad decisions. So when I did get attention, it was very negative attention. So I never got positive attention. And I don't know, it was very unhealthy. I never had a good example of like a healthy relationship as far as like watching my mom, like my mom and my father, as far as I can remember, they were never together. I think they separated when I was like 2 or 3. I've never seen him or met him in my life after that. So she was relationship to relationship to relationship, and it was like she never had money. Let me be clear about this. But any money she did have, that was the only reason any man was staying around. For all you ladies out there with kids, tax time, you're you've got a lot of money coming in, and that was the most amount of time a man would stick around with my mother, was for her tax, money. And that was a whole nother issue, is like not getting positive attention from my mom. She struggled with mental health issues, and it was just like a constant cycle of negativity from how she, parented me, and the lack of parenting there was. And then as I got older, I watched her negative relationships, her relationships abuse, using her for money, using her for sex, whatever it may be. It was never for love, and it was never ever healthy, allowing some of her boyfriends to hit us, and try to discipline us, and then they were only around for like 2 months. Um, so yeah, that it's a little bit of a ramble, but I just kind of wanted to summarize a little bit. You want to tell us about how your relationship with your parents kind of, I don't know, shaped your attachment style and what that dynamic was?
Okay, so for me, I think my both of my parents are so wildly different. My mom was the strict disciplinary type of person, and I knew that she loved us. I know that she did her best. I think she tried her best. My dad, on the other hand, was very dismissive of everything that I did. He let me do literally whatever I want. Um, if he would literally drop me off at guys' houses sometimes and pick me up from guys' houses with my hair looking like I just did something, and I was a teenager. And thinking back, that's like so embarrassing. What
Cringy.
else? Yeah. Oh, she was right. So, um, I also don't think I ever felt like really safe with my parents. My mom would often like I say she would snap, and I don't want to say that she snapped and that she didn't have a reason to snap, because she definitely did. have reasons to stop because I was not the best kid. I'm not gonna sit here and be like, I'm so perfect because I'm not. But she would snap, and these fights that we would have would last weeks at a time. And I kind of never knew what the last straw was gonna be, you know? Like, and like I said, she has every reason to be upset with me, but I know like it could be like I didn't do the dishes that day, and the next time it could be because I didn't take the trash out, or like little things, but where it was really the core to like a much bigger problem that was happening. Which again, like it's not her fault. She had a right to be mad. It was just how sudden I perceived it to be. And then I never felt safe with my dad because, like I said, he would drop me off at these guys' houses. Whenever it came to boyfriends and stuff, he never really like had that like you don't mess with my daughter kind of like thing, that like very fatherly, protective kind of thing. And I love my dad to death. He's the best dad ever. But that definitely did affect me. I was also bullied by a lot of my family. And again, my dad never really like put his foot down and was like, hey, you can't talk to my daughter like that. Like, I don't care if you're my nephew or whatever. Like, that's my daughter and you need to respect her point blank, you know? So I think a lot of that, like, had like me just overall feeling unsafe. And I did love my family because like a lot of these problems were like underlying problems, like kind of hidden where you wouldn't have been able to tell anything. But because my mom was also a cobbler, like if I was bullied at school, she was the one kicking the tires of someone's car. If she was always there for me. She was very supportive and did, support me. So it's again like I trusted her to tell her things, and then there's just times where I was like, "Holy shit, what's happening?" And then same thing with my dad. It's like I trusted him because he wasn't an angry person. He wasn't a mean person, but he also didn't keep me safe. So I think that's where a lot of my issues come from. Is that like, and it's so subtle too. Like it doesn't have to be like a traumatic big thing. Like these are little things that happen. And my parents did the best that they could, literally, and I still ended up like this. So there you go.
Thank you for saying that because um I feel like people expect these big dramatic stories of like I was neglected, I was like abused, and although those things are very horrible and they do cause these mental illnesses, you can still have normal people doing the best that they can do. And although they're trying to do the best, they can make the wrong decisions or try to be too much of a friend to their child versus a parent. You know what I mean? I feel like hearing your story and like being around you and your dad, I feel like your dad just wanted to make you happy and he was kind of like a friend more than he was a little. And correct me if I'm wrong, because obviously this is not my relationship and that's y'all's relationship. But I just, from an outsider, it seems like he just wanted to do whatever would make you happy, and he didn't always make the best decisions. He should not have allowed his teenage daughter to go in these boys' houses, and we know what happened. We know what would go on, and he know what would go on, and he shouldn't have allowed that. But I feel like maybe that's just the only way he knew how to make you happy and be a good dad. And this is no, this is no stab in the back to our parents when we talk about these things. I want to make that clear because I don't know if any of our parents will end up listening to this. So I do want to very much so say, like, I know your parents are very supportive. I don't think my mom would ever hear this, but touch on this as well. But this is not a stab in their back and trying to point things out or blame people, because we all do the best that we can do. And I think when I became a mother, is when I understood, like, you're effing human. Like, just because you're a parent doesn't mean you know everything. And you literally do what you can and you pray to God you're making the right decisions and you don't, mess your child up. But at the end of the day, like, we're fucking human. And the odds are probably way higher that you're gonna fucking cause your child something to be wrong with them versus not. Because this world is like so hard, and I want to say that no one take offense to anything we're saying. We're just speaking on our experiences. And we know that you did the best that you could do, but we have to talk about these topics because at the end of the day, if we talk about them more, we can speak to future parents and speak to ourselves and teach ourselves like we know what we're learning about what caused these things to be wrong with us. So maybe we can make a difference and we can be more aware for our children. So maybe we can save some of the hurt and the pain that we had to endure, whether it was purposely or not purposely, it was still pain and it still caused us to be a little effed up in the head, you know?
Yeah, so sorry, Mom. Um, yeah, this is not to backstab her or anything. I love her to death, and she's a great support for me. And but and like I said, they both did the best that they could and what they thought was the best for me. And it's just like I said, anything can happen, anything. And I definitely know that like some things that I've done are definitely have already affected my son because I've already been snappy with him before, and where he can trust whether or not he can trust me is dependent on my mood. Because sometimes like he'll cry and I give him a hug, and sometimes he cries and I'm like, "Why are you crying?" And I snap. So I can already kind of foresee my son having some issues, and I know it's my fault. And I'm sorry, baby. Um, okay. Now, do you want to talk about the relationships that maybe our moms had that may have like that we watched happen in front of us, and then maybe like how those may have affected us? Like watching these toxic relationships and then maybe even like modeling our relationships after those. Because that's all we knew. That's the only relationships we knew. I never saw my dad and my mom together.
So real quick before I touch on that, when did your parents separate?
Mine, I was like two probably. I was probably like around two. So like they were together, but I don't remember that. Like I have no memory of them being together.
Okay. Oh, I that was just like a personal, like I never asked you that before. I don't know why. I just wanted to know that. So my mother and my father separated when I think between 2 and 3 years old. I really don't remember like the stories I get from my mom sometimes are a little bit different than the stories I get from my father's family because I don't speak to my biological father. But I do know that he was very abusive to her, like physically abusive, emotionally very abusive. Abuse runs very deep in both of my families, so a lot of trauma there. And so I watched my mom really put all of her self-worth in relationships, and she didn't want to be alone. If she wasn't in a relationship, she was chasing a relationship. She would constantly choose men over her children, whether it was like not being able to buy us things, she'd spend every dollar she could to give it to another person. And very abusive. She would be abused, she'd be used. Um, She'd allow men to hit us. I think it was sixth grade. Um, she left me and my sister in Texas for a year with a very abusive aunt, and she stayed in Virginia with a very abusive boyfriend of hers. We didn't hear from her for a whole year. She took us there, left us, said she'd be back in a month to like get everything in order to move all of our stuff, and we didn't hear from her for a whole year. And a year later, we get this like dramatic phone call, her crying, and she'd said, I've been kidnapped, I've been chained up for months by this crazy man, blah, 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 blah. I would never abandon you. Like this whole story of like she was kidnapped and she was chained up and she couldn't even like leave. Whether that was true or not, I never seen any police reports. I was in sixth grade, so obviously wasn't even gonna like, I had no ability to confirm that. So it was just like that extensive. And I want to make a PSA. PSA, is that the proper term?
Public service announcement.
Public service announcement or announcement in general. The things I'm gonna say about my childhood and about my life will seem made up because they're that crazy. Okay. So every person I talk to about my life, they look at me and they're like, this bitch is crazy. Like she's making up stuff. My own boyfriend told me that when we met in high school and I would tell him the things that was going on at my house, he thought I was making it up for attention. So I just want to put that out there. In every episode, if I tell you a story about my childhood, I promise I put it on my own life. I'm not making it up. It's true. So I know it could, some of these things, I wish I was making them up. So yeah, my mom left us for a year with a very toxic, abusive aunt. If that doesn't say something, I don't know what does. So yeah, I watched her never want to be alone, and that carried on to um, me not wanting to be alone, and I wasn't happy if I didn't have a partner, and that's why I ended one relationship and jumped into the next one. And I didn't look at the person that I was jumping into the next relationship with. I didn't care. I just wanted someone to be there. And that ended me up in a very toxic relationship with someone that I ended up having a child with. And I never want to speak bad upon anybody because at the end of the day, that is the father of my child. But I will tell you, because of my low self esteem and my examples of relationships, I never learned like respect yourself. Like, don't allow someone to treat you like shit. Look at the red flags, da 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 da, etc. And because of the example I always saw, and I was afraid of being alone. I didn't know how to be alone, and that is very bad. And it's even worse to have a child with someone like that. And I wouldn't take it back. I love, love, love being a mother, and I love my child so much. I just wish that it was with a healthier person and a kinder person and a more caring person. So, yeah, pretty deep. Let's get into your parents' relationships and what you took from those.
My dad never really dated anyone. He had like one serious girlfriend. And he ended up pushing her away because she had four kids and he didn't want to treat them the same way that he treated us, or give them the same that he gave me and my sister, because he gave us a lot. He wanted to continue to do that, and but I loved that girlfriend. That girlfriend was so nice to us. And then my mom, on the other hand, has been married a few times. And the first one, I think, was like the most toxic relationship in my eyes because, and I think in both marriages, she kind of overlooked red flags. Obviously, she didn't do it in any like bad way. She did it with the hopes like, oh, well, maybe it's not that bad. Maybe it's, like I can overlook this. It's not a big deal. And mostly with the way that she had met them is the biggest red flag. But and I can relate because I've met people and I've dated people in that same way. I've met people in places that are not meant to be, are not meant to be meeting for people that you're in a date. Yeah, she overlooked red flags, and I think that was like the biggest downfall of like overlooking them and then like giving them the benefit of the doubt. And that's kind of what I do now. Like when I do talk to people, my mom always says I have to have a minimum of three red flags because I have those red flags and I just like right over my head, and I just kind of like assume like, okay, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. It's not a big deal. And I kind of feel like I kind of maybe picked that up from her, like a habit I picked up from her, just overlooking red flags that I shouldn't overlook because their problems are gonna be had later on. Whenever that honeymoon phase is over, you're gonna be like, oh shit, what did I just do? Um, so I think that is probably like what I learned from my mom's relationships. And also she just put so much into relationships, like financially wise. Her first husband, she gave so much to him and like literally picked him up from the ground, and now he has like a whole business basically because of her, because she supported him and he built this business while he was with her, and then he just like left her in the dust. So and this happened twice. So she just gives so much into relationships. I feel like I do the same thing when I really like someone. and I really like someone, I will do just about anything for that person when I really like them. And I really definitely believe in like supporting the people that you love and you care about. And that's something I picked up from her. It's just caring a lot and overlooking red flags. My poor mom. I love her. All right, so now that we've talked about how our parents' relationships have affected us, do you want to talk about how our relationships may have affected our children?
Yeah, definitely.
So when it comes to my relationships, like I said, I haven't really dated. I've been single for 6 years, and I know I've dated a few people, but like I don't count it. I don't count it if I haven't dated them for over 6 months. But a few of these people have met my kids, and I regret it so much because I was so like, head over heels with these people that were toxic, and I just again overlooked it. This last guy, he was honestly kind of great. He was a bad person in the background to me, but as far as it came to my kids, he was actually kind of great. He would like go to like my kids like little sports classes like karate class or gymnastics class, and he would like eyes on them. Like he wasn't giving me attention. He would like barely hold my hand in front of them. He would like hold my hand, like give me like a peck on the cheek or something. He would like do homework with my son, like read, help him read and stuff because my son has so much trouble reading. He would do all this like great stuff with him. Oh my God. Like literally I was like falling for him specifically for this reason and again ignoring other red flags. But he was honestly a great guy. Uh with my kids. And then I had that guy that I had wanted to off myself over. He would like whenever I'd get irritated with my kids because I was in a bad mood because I was undiagnosed bipolar, he would like feed into it. He would feed into like me being annoyed with him, and it would only make it worse because then like I felt validated in me being annoyed with him, and so that wasn't ever like good for my kids because it literally breaks my heart and I think about the people that I've let about my kids and I'm like, why would I do this? And there's been like I think two other people that were like that validated. I had a best friend that would also validate my annoyance with my son, but she was also undiagnosed something. Um, she refuses to take medication or anything other than like smoke marijuana, which is fine, but like she won't acknowledge that part of herself. Like it's one thing to like actively choose to not be medicated because you don't want to be, then denying that whole part of you and then refusing medication. Like take accountability. Yeah. So, and then I had another boyfriend that also did the same thing, would validate my annoyance with the kids and also kind of like even snap at them. He never put his hands on them, but he would like, he wanted the attention from me. So he would kind of like almost block the kids. And I'd always tell him, like, hey, can you not come so early so that I can like at least put the kids to bed? And that way when we're together, I can give you attention and you're not taking time away from my kids. And he never listened. Drove me crazy. Yeah. That's how my shitty relationships have affected my kids. And I'm trying to be better about letting people around my kids. It's like a minimum of a 6 month period before I let you meet my kids. And that way I'm not like just bringing in a horde of guys that could potentially hurt my kids and or like just straight up not like my kids. I want to make sure that they're good at least. So yeah. How about you?
Yeah, I think that there should definitely be like a time period just to piggyback on what you said. I think especially when you struggle with mental health, um, you're not gonna always pick up on things that you should pick up on, especially when you're not getting the help you need. So, diagnose, undiagnosed, if you have children and you're dating, stop letting every person you're infatuated with meet them. Because guess what? Most of them aren't going to be around. Most of them are not going to, be there in a few years. And you're not only putting them at risk to be harmed in one way or another, whether it's emotional or not, but you're confusing them. and you're definitely like they're children, so they bond, after a certain amount of time they get used to someone being around. And then when you break up with them, they're like, what the heck? Why isn't this person in my life anymore? And it's kind of like can can almost, if it's enough, it can almost cause abandonment issues because they're not like, it's not like a parent, but like they built a relationship and a bond with this person and they're just gone. No explanation, no like continued visits, because obviously when you break up with somebody, you just want to be done with them. So yeah, definitely don't do that. I know it's easier said than done, and I'm not judging anyone who does, because sometimes you're just not aware and you can't really, in the moment, you're not really like, you think like, well, it's going great with this person. I think it's a good time for them to meet. But do your best to protect your kids, even from somebody you're dating, because just because you're having a good time doesn't mean it's okay for your kids to meet them. They need to be you need to set people at a very, very high standard before they meet your kids. Your kids are gold. Treat them like royalty. Not everybody gets to meet the king and the queen, okay? So as far as, effects of my relationships with my son, me and his father were not together when he was born. We broke up around like, I think I was like around 6 months pregnant. So to be honest with you, I don't think that really had any effect on him. I mean, how could it? Because he wasn't born. But the dynamic between the two of us definitely did. It definitely does take a toll on him. We always did our best to not like have arguments in front of him and things like that, but I feel like he could always sense the energy between the exchanges and stuff like that. And there's always little comments and stuff that he would make. And as far as this relationship that I'm in now, it is with someone I knew from 15. I met him when I was 15. I was in high school. So I met him for a long time. We were married and we separated. So he met Aiden when Aiden was 1. And because I was so close with him and I didn't have intentions of being in a relationship with him again, it was almost like reconnecting with a friend and having kind of like a play date. Like his son is 10 months older than Aiden. So when we first reconnected after a few years of not seeing each other, it wasn't like on a level of like, oh, this is going to be stepdaddy. We was just like kind of just like spending time together, and we would do play dates and stuff like that. And he was like 1 years old. And I felt so comfortable introducing him to him because I knew he was a very kind person, and I just knew him. I know him on a deeper level than I would anyone else. And, our relationship is not perfect. We've had arguments, and sometimes when you get heated, you kind of forget who's to this side and who's to this side. And I feel like it took us a while to really realize and to learn, like, because it was the first relationship I'd had after having a child, so I had to learn to be more aware, and I think we both did. So in the beginning it was like, you have a little bit of a dispute or a little bit of an argument, and he'd get this like, I feel like he had a little bit of anxiety almost. It was never aggressive or anything like that, but just even raising the volume of your voice in front of children, it can be like a little startling. And it was really more on my part, to be honest with you, than it was on his. So I feel like he has a little bit of anxiety. Maybe it is from that, seeing me kind of like snap on my boyfriend sometimes, or get irritated really quickly. Like, I feel like in that aspect, it's the relationship, but then it's really more so me. It's kind of hard to determine, but I feel like if I wasn't in a relationship, he wouldn't see that side of me. Do you know what I mean? Like that side only comes out, I feel like, by a romantic partner. Like certain arguments, like I'm not very easily triggered by anybody. It's either my romantic partner or like my very close family. Anyone else is not going to get a reaction out of me. I've kind of learned, like, I'm not going to waste my time with you. If you're not if you're not my family and you're not my boyfriend, I'm not going to waste my time and get irritated. So I say that, so that's kind of why I say that part kind of makes him a little bit anxious and builds up the anxiety, because he would see me get irritated quickly and kind of start an argument over this, over that. And we're working on it. We've gotten a lot better I should say I've gotten a lot better. I make it a point to like if I start feeling irritated or I can sense he's about to say something, I tell him in Spanish, cut it, because I can't understand Spanish. I'd be like, dime later. No hablas así enfrente de él. Tell him don't say that in front of him. Just little stuff like that. Like we try our best to work on it. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I'm thankful and I'm very lucky that I haven't, been through this whole dating thing because I know for 100% I would probably be in the same boat as you because we are so similar in our attachment styles. I feel like I was like actively dating different people and things like that. It would probably have negative effects on my son, the way I'm sure it has on yours. Not not because I would introduce them because that was always my thing because of my trauma and what I went through, in my childhood. I've always been very, very paranoid about who I let around my son. Like even with family members, like he has not I can count on maybe one hand how many people he's been left alone with, and that includes with family. So very, very like I don't play about who's around my child. Like so it would never be that, but I feel like the things that would trigger me in that relationship would then make me irritable and that would carry on to my child. And so yeah, I think that when I'm in a very unhealthy situation, it does affect him. If I'm irritated, that affects him. If I'm moody, that irritates him. And most of my irritation and moodiness comes from relationship problems because sometimes when you do deal with mental illness, you can interpret things differently than what they actually are. And I tend to do that a lot. So I think that children of women who are struggling with mental illness, they are more susceptible to being affected by that just because those mothers don't always interpret things the right way and they're easily triggered and they're easily irritated and so on and so forth. So yeah, that's kind of how I feel like for the most part he hasn't been too damaged or hurt by my specific relationship in the current since he was 1, so he's 5 now, so 4 years relationship.
I think you're doing good. I think you're doing good. I think my biggest worry is like, besides like guys coming in and out of the kid's life, is like their dad is already very inconsistent, you know? And so I feel like whenever like another guy leaves, it's like another one. And someone else left me, I think they take it very personal. As my son, like that really good guy that I was telling you about, my son cried about him, and he was only around for a month. He was like really upset about him, and I'm like, I'm so sorry. Like you know, um, then I think I worry about like the inconsistency of their dad and their dad not being around, and also on top of that, their like any boyfriend I have doing the same thing, coming in and out, or like just leaving, period, because they have no like legal ties to my kids. If that makes sense. So
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, at least you're aware of that now, and maybe the next one that they meet will be the husband, maybe not the next boyfriend.
hopefully we can only hope. Well, let's just see. I don't want to like get all hyped up and stuff about anything. Yeah, and even then, like I told y'all about him in the last episode, and I really like him, and I'm over here like trying my hardest, like, and he's like making plans, like, oh, we should take the kids to Glen Rose, or we should take the kids to like, we should go take the kids to go see the Christmas lights and stuff like that. And I'm like, that sounds like so much fun, but like, it's only been, by at that point, it'll only be like 2 or 3 months of us dating. So that's still too soon. And I'm just like, but he's trying. I really like that he's trying so hard. But also, is it real?
Yeah, I mean, the fact that he's trying to involve your children, A plus, good job, guy. At the same time, Mama Bear, you have to protect those kids. And I think only time will tell if that is real, and you need to give it that time. You cannot, I mean, we love the enthusiasm, we love it, but you two need to create a relationship and you two need to actually truly get to know each other before you can bring him in and introduce him. And that's nothing against him. That's not saying you don't trust him. That's not saying anything towards him because, I feel like some men can be very egotistical and they can take things to the heart and it's like something to do with them. It's not that at all. But as you said with your experience, your children have been hurt by the inconsistent relationships. So I think that you need to just do your best going forward, protect them from that, and you need to develop that relationship and get to know these people. You can't get to know somebody in a few months. You may think you know them, you don't know them. Let me tell you, definitely give it time. We love the enthusiasm though. We do love that. That's because some men would be like, "Oh, you got kids? I'm out." So it's good.
So then we can finish off with, what do you think your ideal relationship should look like or would look like? Or do you think you're in your ideal relationship?
You want to go first?
I don't even know what an ideal relationship would look like. I just like, because I don't know what I want half the time. I'm very much
Avoidant,
in this.
avoiding.
Yeah, I'm very. See, there you go. I'm avoiding. I'm like, I don't know where I'm at right now. I don't know. Like,
Dig
I really
deep,
like this guy.
dig deep in the loving version of yourself, the version that thinks that you're worthy of greatness and great. Even when I mentioned marriage, you're like, "Oh, I don't want to push it." Girl, I was not talking about that guy. See, you're already avoiding marriage with this current guy. I wasn't even talking about him. I was just
I'm
saying,
avoiding marriage, period.
period. Don't get married. It's a trap. It's a trap.
Yeah, so I think, okay, in an ideal relationship, I would be able to like talk openly about my feelings and them accept it, like just be able to help me like understand myself a little bit more, and understand us together. I would love to be able to like do family stuff and, my kids to love them, obviously, and for me to love them and, live happily ever after, have family nights and game nights and, all that fun family stuff of a together-ish family that I didn't have as a child, of like my parents being split up, and I would love for my children to have a more real family for themselves. Of like, this is a, even if it's a stepdad, I would love them to have that like family like feel, because right now it's really just me, them, and my mom and my dad. And while that is a family, they don't have that like dad father figure around. And I feel like they would really benefit from that if I ever found the right guy. So then I'm thinking about them in the long term, me in the short term, but them in the long term.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you. I mean, that's amazing that you are thinking about your kids because that's the same thing I would do. Is like, what's going to be best for my son? Even though we're talking about a relationship for us, I want you to tell me what's an ideal relationship for you. What would be good for you? Like, what do you want and need? Not for your kids, but what do you want for yourself?
Honesty, like loyalty, honesty. Like I think like the bare minimum. I would love like this guy to like this guy. He literally thinks about me and everything that he does. Like I took a nap the other day and I didn't answer him immediately. And he was like he knew I was having a really bad day that day. And so he like brought me snacks. He brought me some coffee in my favorite flavor, vanilla. He knows I love vanilla. He knows I like hot chips, so he brought me hot Cheetos. And then he brought me M&Ms, which was like yum. So and then he like sat there and watched American Horror Story with me, even though he has like night terrors. So this poor guy, like, he's just so good and so sweet. And honestly, everything I didn't know I wanted, he's doing. So it's just, and he has that like very reassuring for me. And he doesn't, I don't even ask for it. He just does it. And I would love someone, if not him, hopefully him, if not him, for someone to just like show me they care without me having to ask for them to show me that they care. and he's doing that. So I really appreciate it, like a lot. It's awesome.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear what you would want for yourself. Obviously, your kids come first, but you also matter. What you need matter as well. Um, my ideal relationship, it would look like what I have now. I feel like, and I think that you can never have a perfect relationship, no matter what. I feel like there are always things in every relationship that you'd be like, I wish it was like this, or I wish it was like this, I wish it was like this. What I care about most is respect, loyalty, honesty, and number one above all of that is loving my child, respecting my child, and also putting my child first. I want, I put my child first. So I expect the person I'm with to put my child first. You know what I mean? And that might sound out of this world because they're obviously not going to be the biological father of my child. But at the end of the day, if you're with me, he is like this. He's connected to me. He is me. That is me. So if you love me, you love him. And I truly feel like I have that. And that is why it's like you love somebody and you care for somebody and you're like attracted to somebody, but like when you see them truly love your child, even though they have no real like responsibility to that child, it's like another level, another like respect. It's like another level of respect, another level of like love, like wow, like you must love me so much. Like it's so indescribable. And like if it would ever not work out with me and my current boyfriend, like I don't think he would ever like not be in Aiden's life. And I don't ever foresee that happening. Like I feel like we'd probably be together forever. And if we weren't, it'd be my fault because toxic sometimes. But yeah, I mean, respect me, understand me because I'm a very complex person and I'm very complicated and I'm very like, and I know that's who I've accepted, that's who I am. And it's not always the easiest to deal with. So whoever can deal with me, respect to you. That's a whole nother thing. You can deal with me. You're a strong person.
God bless you, goddamn.
God bless you. You are a very secure person.
Thank you guys for listening to this whole podcast and this whole episode. And we're so excited for you guys to keep listening to the next episode. We have a very, very, very important topic coming up in the next episode, and we really need you guys to listen. Um, it's very important.
Before we end this episode, go vote. Vote, 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 vote.
I know that everyone thinks that our votes don't count, but I feel like if everyone thought, if all the people that thought our votes don't count actually voted, it would be enough people for it to count. So, yes, go vote.
You're like a little lazy and a little irresponsible because the fact is, like she said, our vote together matters. Our one vote don't matter. Together we matter. And just because it's not an election for our president doesn't mean it's not important. Because guess what? Our president doesn't make all the decisions. Our senators, our governors, and everyone underneath them, they make these decisions as well. So this is what we're voting for in this election. And there's something really big on the ballot coming up, and our next episode is going to be about that. And I'm sorry to cut you off. Finish our outro.
Yeah, so listen to the next episode. We're so happy that you got to listen to us. Be sure to check out the books attached. Welcome home.
It was psychcentral.com. Listen, I only read one article, so I don't really know anything like a lot about the website, but it seemed very informational. So check it out if you want to learn more about attachment styles.
And also look up that doctor from your book. What was the doctor's name?
Daniel J. Fox. Yes.
So we're gonna check out Attached, Welcome Home, and Daniel J. Fox. And we will link their information in the description of this episode. And again, we are so excited and
Thank you guys for listening.